Hi everyone, welcome to the Skeins of Dreams knitting podcast. I'm Megha. I'm also known as Skeins of Dreams on Instagram and on Ravelry. I'm coming to you from Buffalo, New York. I have been living in Buffalo for 5 years now, and this is the corner of YouTube where I talk about my knitting and my making. And thank you all for joining me. If you're new, thank you so much for checking out my video. I have a whole other I have a lot of other videos you could watch. This is episode 8, and if you've watched my previous videos and you're sticking with me, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. One of the viewers in my previous episode kind of told me that I use my iPhone to record these podcasts, and I have been using the front camera so I can see when I show my knitting, I can see what I'm doing. But one of the viewers kindly pointed it out that when I do that, I'm looking at myself and I'm not actually looking into the camera. So it feels like I'm looking to the side and instead of like talking straight to you. So I'm trying with this video to correct that. I've put a small painter's tape next to my front camera so I can, so there's something on the screen that like kind of pulls my attention to it. There is my picture here that I can see, but I have to train myself to not look at that. I'm sure with practice it'll get better, and this way when I'm actually showing some knitting I can look to the side, and please don't mind that. But I'm just making sure when I'm talking about stitches or patterns or something that I'm pointing to the right thing when I'm showing it. I haven't invested in any fancy equipment for recording these, and I just use my iPhone, and I think that's sufficient for now. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you all are having a really good holiday season. I'm enjoying a week off from work as we speak. Today is the 29th of December. I saved some vacation days so I could take the time from Christmas to New Year's off, and this week has been a really relaxed and much required break from everything. I'm doing a lot of crafting. Does not mean that I'm sitting. Vacations for me don't mean that I'm just sitting and doing nothing. I'm always constantly doing something or the other, things that I really want to do, so that's good. I'm enjoying it. So I thought I'd come and record a podcast today, update you about all the knitting that's been going on, all the making, and welcome. So before we start with the knitting content, some of you who watched my previous episode would know that I visited my best friend in Dallas. She and her husband had a baby in October, and they had a small cradle ceremony to celebrate the birth of their baby, to welcome her, and to have all close friends and family come and bless her. It was a really nice break from a monotony that we got. We flew there on the 21st of December, and we were there until the 25th. We had a really wonderful time. My niece is so pretty, she's so beautiful. I had so much fun interacting with her. She's only 2 months old now, but already so smart. She understands what you're talking about. I'm sure babies pick up really quickly, right? Like I think this is the first time I'm interacting with a child that young since I was a child myself. I mean, I'm sure there were a lot of kids around when I was younger, and I interacted with them when I was a kid, but as an adult I don't think I've interacted with a lot of babies this young. During Thanksgiving, when I went to my cousin's engagement, I did see a lot of my nieces and nephews, but they were at least 1 year old, so I've never really held a 2-month-old before, but there's a checkbox. So I did that this past week, and it was really wonderful. She's so pretty, and of course I'll talk about the things I made for her, and when I showed it to my friend, and her mom was there, and everyone really appreciated all the knitting that I've been doing already, and I have more things planned, of course. I get a lot of joy from making things for close friends and family, and this particular niece of mine is just going to be showered with all the knits until she asks me herself to stop. So I had a really good trip. We came back on Saturday. That was the 25th of December, and since then we've just been home, and I go back to work on Monday on the 3rd of Jan. So there are no plans for this week. We're just lazing at home, and I'm crafting as much as I can. I actually did a lot of quilting, and I'm gonna record right after this. I'm probably gonna record a short video for my quilting journey, and I think I'll upload it in the next few weeks sometime, maybe next week or so. Hopefully, since I've mentioned it here, I will do it. I've been sitting on that idea for a while and I've not done it, so I'm putting it out there, and now that I've put it out there, I've made the commitment, so I have to do it. Yeah, so that's just how my vacation has been going, and I hope all of you are having a really wonderful time with your friends and family, and that you've been watching all the beautiful vlogmases that are out there on YouTube right now. I was following all the vlogmases very diligently up until my trip to Dallas, and once I went there and kind of lost track of everything. So now I'm slowly trying to get back on track and watch all the videos that I've missed in this duration. There is so much content to consume. Yeah, but I'm enjoying now that I'm home and I have more time to just craft and just like watch YouTube videos. I'm definitely doing that. Yeah, okay. So I think I've given enough of an introduction, I guess. Now let's move on to the knitting content. So in my previous video, I had talked about doing kind of an Ask Me Anything video, but I was asking if I should do one long video answering all the questions, or do a segment in every podcast episode where I just answer one or two questions. And I wanted to do the with every podcast kind of a format, because I didn't want to have one lengthy 2-hour video answering like 10-15 questions, because I think it gets tiring for me and for you to like sit through all of that. So I think I'm gonna add a segment of Ask Megha Anything. It's perfect, right? It's still an AMA segment. I think one of the viewers suggested that, so I like it. Ask Megha Anything. So I can answer knitting, crochet, baking, personal questions, as long as I'm comfortable answering those. So I think I'm gonna start a Google form or something. You can see the link in the description box. You want to put in a question, go ahead, put it in. I may have, I guess as we do more of these, there are bound to be repeat questions. So I'm gonna make sure that if there's a repeat question, I somehow let you know that it's been answered in a specific episode. So if you want to go back and look at it, we can do that. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, you know me, I don't plan that much in advance. We'll figure it out as we go. So in the first Ask Megha Anything section, I'm going to talk about my first sweater. I got this question a lot. If you've been watching my videos, I do make a lot of garments, and a lot of you were interested in knowing how my sweater making journey started, and I'm going to tell you a short story. That's what I do. I'm good at telling stories. So when I started my knitting journey, how it all began, I guess my first sweater journey is kind of my knitting journey, I guess. I'll tell you the story. I was living in Pittsburgh in grad school, and I have a really dear friend of mine who was wearing a beautiful color work hat. For during winter one day, and I just complimented her. I was like, oh, this is such a pretty hat you have. And she was like, oh yeah, thank you, I made it. And I was like, wait, what? You made that? Until then, it had never struck me that knitting was a thing. I mean, I've seen my grandmother and my mother knitting when I was a kid, but I guess I kind of didn't, like, you know, forgot that memory, or just didn't never thought about it. It never occurred to me that I could be doing something like this. It was only when my friend mentioned that she made the hat, and I was like, oh my god, you can actually make things, pretty things with your hands. So the first thing I did, I took a bus and went to my nearest Michael's. Michael's is a craft store here in the US. It's a pretty big chain, and it has a whole lot of crafting supplies, like whatever craft you can think of, you can buy it at Michael's. So I just went to Michael's, and I went to the yarn section, and of course it was really overwhelming. I didn't know what I was getting into. I saw all these colors, I saw all these yarns, they looked thin and thick, and I didn't know, you know, what was happening. So I called my friend and I was like, okay, I'm here, but I have no idea what I'm doing, so give me some pointers, like what should I get and what should I look for. And I had not done any research, I didn't look up on YouTube or anything, so she just told me to pick a thick yarn and just refer to the ball band. It should have a size of needle that goes along with it, and I could buy that same needle as recommended with the yarn. So I think I first picked up the Lion brand Wool Ease or something. I think that I liked mustard and a brown color, and I picked that up. I got the needles, I got like bamboo needles. I came home, put on a YouTube video, and I started a scarf, which is what everybody does, is start a scarf. And then 2 days in, you're like, okay, this is boring. I mean, once I learned how to do knitting and purling, it was a simple knit and purl scarf and everything. I got really bored. I couldn't I couldn't carry on for too long. So that's basically how I started knitting. And then I bought a lot more yarn from Michael's, and I kept trying different things. I don't think I made anything to completion. I made a lot of small stuff, but I kind of quickly got over everything. And I don't know, I was just like figuring out things as I go. I tried making a lot of scarves, I tried making cowls and everything, but it didn't stick. Like, I couldn't finish any project, and I was very upset about the color choices I made, and it was all very weird. Then I realized that maybe if I made like a big wrap of, you know, I am always into big shawls and blankets, so I think that was the first project that I finished. And because I didn't make it for myself, I actually made it for my mom. If I make things for myself, I don't finish them. That is very typical of me. If I make things for myself and it's a test knit, that's when I finish things. I think that this is still continuing. I still do this a lot. So anyway, so I made a wrap. I found Pearl Soho. That's what happened actually. So I found the Pearl Soho website, and I looked at one of their seed stitch wraps, and I really liked the look of it, and I thought my mother would really enjoy it. So I bought some Knit Picks yarn to knit with it. The way I found Knit Picks was also quite funny. I was attending a class in grad school, and I was sitting at the back of the class, and you know how we're allowed to have our laptops open because you can refer to stuff while the class is going on. And I'm sitting in this class, and there's a girl sitting diagonally opposite in front of me, and she was looking at yarn on her computer. I know I'm not supposed to be looking at other people's screens, but this was jumping out at me. She was like scrolling through, and the colors just looked amazing. Like, I was like, okay, which website are you looking at? You're buying all this beautiful yarn. And so I was like kind of squinting and trying to look at what she's looking at, and I could read the address box, and it said Knit Picks. And so I made a note of it on my laptop, and then after class I wasn't gonna start looking at it in class. I would never pay attention. So after class, I went over to the KnitPicks website and I saw the yarn and it just like blew my mind. It was so many colors, so beautiful. So I think I wanted to make the Pearl Soho seed stitch wrap, and I picked out my colors, and I think they were very autumnal colors. And I got the yarn and I knit that seed stitch wrap for my mom, and I finished it. That was my first actually finished project. It didn't turn out really well. My gauge was really bad. It kind of turned out to be a narrow, really long. It wasn't a wrap as much as it was a scarf, which is funny because I couldn't finish any other scarves. But it wasn't a wrap as in you can't wrap it around yourself. It's a really, really big, long scarf. It was not broad enough to be a wrap. Anyway, I gifted it to my mom. I don't know what it's doing right now. I think it's sitting in her closet somewhere. But that was that was my first completely finished object. And then I wanted to make sweaters. Like I was like, okay, I've finished a project. I want to jump to sweater making. So back then I didn't know anything. I'm saying back then, this was like 2016. So whatever, 5 years ago. I didn't know about Ravelry. Like I had not logged into Ravelry. I didn't know there was a huge encyclopedia of patterns, of yarns, of everything available. I think I had kind of bumped into Ravelry. Like sometimes you look at patterns and it takes you to the Ravelry website and asks you to create a login. I never bothered to do that. I was like, okay, I don't know. I don't want to get more spammy emails and everything. So I never created an account. So what I did was I went online on Amazon, and I'm just checking how much I'm talking, but it's okay. You've all let me know that you don't mind the long episodes. So yeah, so I went online on Amazon and I bought this book. This is The Idiot's Guide to Sweater Knitting. I mean, the name says it all. I was like, all right, I don't know anything about knitting. I'm a knitting idiot. This is perfect for me. So I bought this book because I wanted to knit sweaters, and I decided that because I have this habit of not finishing sweaters for myself, that I'm going to knit a sweater for Mr. Skeins of Dreams. Back then he was Skeins of Dreams' boyfriend, I guess. So I decided to knit this classic raglan sweater for Baljit, and I asked him which color he wanted. He's really into like dark greens and things, so I bought KnitPicks Swish Worsted. I think that may be the yarn suggested on this. Yes, so this particular sweater also suggests the KnitPicks Swish Worsted yarn. And so I measured his chest and I decided which size I wanted to knit, and I purchased the yarn. Now this sweater is a pieced sweater. So you knit the front and the back and both the sleeves separately, and then you seam it. And back then, obviously, because I wasn't on Instagram, I didn't look at Ravelry, I didn't know you could do top-down sweaters. I didn't know anything about knitting, and I feel like that kind of helped me because I didn't have any preconceived notions that, oh my god, seaming is a pain, or top-down sweaters are easy to try on, or not having a proper gauge can affect your knitting. I had absolutely no preconceived notions. I just picked up this book, I found a sweater, I was like, I know it's going to be a challenge, but I'm going to figure it out. And I looked at all the information given, I read the book, I was like, okay, they told me to swatch, I swatched, I figured out my needles, and I started the sweater. And I finished it. And actually, Baljit still wears it. And I know this is going to sound really weird because I'm like, oh, I made my first sweater and it actually worked. But there were sweaters after that when I actually got into knitting properly that didn't work out so well. So I feel like this first one kind of worked out by fluke. I just, took a book and did what they asked me to, and it worked out because I followed the instructions through and through. But after that, every time I think next 3 or 4 sweaters didn't work out at all, and we'll get to that later. But this is the basic raglan sweater I knit. And on screen, I guess it looks okay, but now that I've knit a lot of sweaters and I'm looking at it, there's a lot of issues with it. Like, my seaming was completely awful. You can see how stark that looks. That seam doesn't look really good right now. There's holes under the arm. Look how untidy that is. Well, yeah, I mean, it was my first sweater, so I'm not gonna be too harsh about it. I picked up stitches for the neck, and there's like a hole in here. So yeah, this sweater right now, if I look at it, it looks just okay. But back then when I made it, I was really happy with how it turned out, and it actually fits Baljeet really well. And I think because I followed gauge and it was a tight gauge, even though this is a superwash yarn, it didn't grow as much. And I think a pieced sweater is also something, or a seamed sweater is also something that prevents the superwash sweaters from growing too much. So actually this fits him really well. He wears it now at home. It's just his sweater he throws on every day. And actually this year, last year maybe he didn't wear it as much, but this year he pulled it out and he's been wearing it a lot. Which is funny because I kept wanting to talk about my first sweater, but he would always be wearing it. So I was like, okay, today I'm going to take this aside and clean it up a little. I depilled it slightly, but since he wears it at home, we don't really care about pilling. So you can see this raglan seam is also something I had to seam, and there's a lot of cat hair on it. That's life. But yeah, so this was my first sweater, and I got lucky and it turned out really well. After this, I went crazy. I found Webs, which is a really big yarn store in the US again, and their website is literally yarn.com. And I found Webs and I bought so much yarn, so many skeins of I think I didn't, from the beginning, I didn't have any preconceived notions about acrylic, wool, alpaca, whatever. I wanted to try it all, so I purchased a lot of types of yarn, and I think I made a bulky sweater for myself. I made it in superwash yarn, but it was also bulky and it was my size, so it was a really heavy sweater. And by the time I washed and blocked it, the sweater grew to my knees. It was ridiculous. So that didn't turn out really well, and every time a sweater didn't turn out well, I kind of gave it away. I gave it to Goodwill. That's what I did. I really didn't know that you could actually rip your sweaters back and reuse yarn. I made sweaters, they didn't work, and I gave them to Goodwill. That's what I did. I'm saying that's what I did. I think that happened like 2 or 3 times, not any more than that. But yeah, so that's basically how I started knitting sweaters. And the 2 sweaters after this, I made one which was, like I mentioned, bulky and it grew to my knees. The other sweater, I don't know what I was thinking, was an off-shoulder sweater. Now that I think about it, why would you need an off-shoulder sweater? Like, the whole point of a sweater is to keep you warm, and if it's off-shoulder, you're not warm. But anyway, I knit again a bulky sweater which is off-shoulder, which had 0 use, and I couldn't wear it ever. Like, I modeled the pictures, I took a picture for Instagram, and that's about it. After that, I was like, what do I do with this? This is no good to anybody. So I think that sweater also I gave away at Goodwill. But yeah, so that's basically how I started knitting sweaters. So I think the one thing I took away from this entire thing now, 5-6 years later, now that I think about it, is that sometimes when you talk to people or they say, oh, this is so difficult, oh, seaming sweaters is a pain, oh, top down sweaters are easy, bottom up is easy. I think this is all just perspective. I think when we don't have that much information and we just decide that we want to do something and we just follow a set of instructions, we can do it. Of course, the pattern has to be well written for a beginner, and that's why I feel like this book helped, because the patterns here are kind of hand holding. There's a lot of introduction in the beginning of the book where they talk about sweater making, sweater construction, gauge, and all of that, which I read diligently. And then I picked a sweater. It's a basic sweater. Yes, it was a seamed sweater, no problem. And I did that. And I think that gave me the confidence that I can try other things and not feel like, oh, I'm a beginner, I can't handle this or I can't handle that. I think we start overthinking it when there's so much discussion that goes into it. I just think you should, if you've not made a sweater so far, pick one that you like. Let it be a simple one. Let it not be something with like a lot of details, but like a simple sweater. Pick a pattern. I mean, there are so many beautiful patterns available. If you would like to know some, reach out to me or reach out to anyone who has made 4 or 5 sweaters, and they'll let you know which pattern to follow, and pick a good pattern and then just follow it. Just do it. Once you do it, you'll realize there's not that much into it. Like, yes, you can make errors and yes, you may have to rip back, but I mean, you learn everything. For example, this book had instructions on how to seam the sweater, but I didn't like the instructions, or I didn't understand mattress stitch very well. So I went on YouTube and I just like looked for mattress stitch, and there are so many tutorials that I found, and that's how I did the mattress stitch. I mean, I didn't do it very well. Right now, if I look at it, it looks ugly, but I just jumped into it. So I think that's my my takeaway from my first sweater. So, what am I wearing? This is last year's holiday sweater that I knit for myself. I think this is a heavily modified version of the pavement sweater. I think the pavement sweater is by Veera Valimaki. I actually forgot to look that up before I started recording, so I'm gonna put it on the screen here so you'll know if I've already made an error. So yeah, this is the pavement sweater and I've heavily modified it. It's a simple raglan top kind of a sweater, and it's made with one color, I believe. I wanted to stripe it, and I also I made a modification in terms of gauge as well. So usually when I'm feeling really lazy and it's not a test knit, so I don't have to follow gauge and everything, and I kind of make up my mind about what I want to do with a particular yarn. And so for example, I had this sweater has been knit in tuku wool fingering. I had an idea of striping these colors, and I really wanted a simple raglan because it was already going to be striped and everything, so I didn't want to add any other features to it. So I wanted a simple raglan, so I took the pavement sweater and I started knitting it with, I think, a small enough needle, I think US 2 or something. I started knitting the collar, and when I was, I think, like a few inches down, I measure my gauge. So that kind of tells me, okay, how my knitting is going, and so what is my current gauge, and then based on that I decide how many raglan increases to do, and I keep trying on the sweater. And so once I think the raglan is deep enough, I try it on, and it's kind of a trial and error kind of thing. Now that I've knit a lot of raglan sweaters and other sweaters, I kind of know when I try on the yoke whether it's time to split for the sleeves and everything. So that's what I ended up doing. I do this only with knits that I'm kind of lazy about, and it's a simple raglan, so it's not like I need to follow a pattern through and through. So I kind of just started with a small enough needle, or a needle that should be sufficient, and once I start knitting I measure my gauge. I can block it if I feel like the yarn's going to change quite a bit post blocking, but like something woolly like this doesn't really change much. It blooms in the sense that the gaps get filled, but it doesn't change my gauge all that much. And if I'm not looking for a very well fitted something, I don't mind if it gets a little bigger, slightly looser. You can see this one has some ease. Don't mind, if my eyes are wandering off, I'm just looking at what I'm showing on the screen here. I'm trying my best to train my eye to just look at the camera. So yeah, anyway, this one has quite a bit of ease, but I kind of like that. I like the relaxed fit of this sweater, and it has only 3/4 sleeves. I also did that because how much yarn I had, I did the sleeves simultaneously, and if I couldn't finish another repeat, I just stopped. But I kind of like this length on my arms because when I'm indoors, I'm in the office, I don't really want always a full sleeved sweater or something, so this is perfect. I really enjoyed. I do feel cold on my shoulders usually, so I like having something at least till my elbow. I like sleeves that go up till my elbow at least. So yeah, this was a very casual thing I started last year. I suddenly had an idea I wanted this striped sweater for Christmas, and I started knitting it in like November 2020, and I was done by I think late November 2020, and I was done like in 3 weeks or something. Stripes, I feel, go really quickly. So yeah, so I used Tuku wool fingering for this, and I'm gonna tell you the colors. I'm sorry if that's wrong. So this burgundy on top is, I think, Harvey, and then this is mauve pink, which is called Uyo. The dark forest green is Havu, and this chartreuse color is Celia, I think. Those are the colors Tuku wool fingering. I know Tuku wool has kind of updated their colors and come out with new ball bands and things like that, but this I had purchased, like I said, last year from, I want to say I got it from the Woolly Thistle. I think so. I can't remember which store I purchased it, but there are many stores in the US that sell Tuku wool yarns. So I am really happy with this sweater. I like the high neck. I do sometimes feel that this yarn is not soft enough for this area of my neck, and I kind of feel a little itchy. I sometimes do think what I could maybe like sew or a ribbon to like around the neck in the front, so it doesn't feel a little prickly, but I don't want to do that. I don't know if it will show up in the front. I think I can train myself to wear it. If it's cold enough, I don't think I'll feel the prickle, but if it's warm and I'm wearing this, I definitely feel a prickle here. Today I'm not feeling it at all. I'm very comfortable, so I don't know, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how this turned out, and I'm going to put a video of me just twirling in it so you can see how long it is and where it falls and how it looks when I'm standing up. Right now I'm sitting on the floor. I'm not gonna get up. So yeah, so this is my version of the pavement sweater, and this was my holiday sweater for last year, and I wear this a lot. I really love it. It has not pilled at all. Like, this is a really beautiful yarn. I can't speak enough about it. Like, it's really nice to knit with, and it becomes really kind of fluffy, and it blooms when you block it, so the drape on the sweater is very nice, and I'm very happy with it. Alright, let's talk about my finished objects. One of my biggest finished objects, which I don't have with me right now because I gave it to my niece in Dallas, is the crochet blanket I was making for her. It's the Bears Rainbow Blanket, which is a free pattern by Pearl Soho, and I spoke about it in the last episode. I showed you like the individual granny squares that I had pieced together, made panels, and I was supposed to seam all the panels together and make it one full blanket, and I finished it. I put a simple border on it, I washed and dried it, and I gifted it, and it looks really, really good. I'm very proud of how that blanket turned out. Like, it is really beautiful. I think I made a good call with the color, like the colors that I picked. I think I picked 17 colors in the Knit Picks Comfy Worsted line, which is a cotton acrylic blend. And I really like using cotton and acrylic yarns for blankets because they can be washed easily. Of course, you can wash wool, but if I'm doing it for myself, I would have no issues using wool. But my friend just had a baby, and I'm sure they're like super busy, don't have time to bother about hand washing a big blanket. So I made it out of cotton and acrylic, and I think it's a really good decision. She can throw it in the washer and then just dry it. I told her not to put it in the dryer. I think she's responsible enough for that. I'm sure she's gonna guard that blanket with her life. She loves it so much. But yeah, so that was my one big finished object, and I'm gonna put pictures on the screen here. And we tried to take some nice model shots of the baby laying on the blanket, but I don't think we got, it was a very busy time. There were a lot of relatives and friends coming and going, so I think my friend is going to take nicer pictures once everything is calmed down and she has some more time. But yeah, so the blanket was very successful, and my friend is really, really, really happy, and it was definitely a bucket list crochet project for me. I really enjoyed it, and the moment I finished that blanket, I felt like I needed another blanket. And you'll see what I did. You can see that in my, I'll talk about that in my works in progress segment. But yeah, that was my first finished object. And I also finished the Mountain Mist sweater that I was making for the baby, and I'll put pictures of her wearing it. She looks so cute in it. I'm so happy I made it a tunic style. So we just put leggings on her and that sweater on top of a t-shirt, and she looks so perfect, so beautiful. I'm so happy that I was able to knit all of these things and take it with me. And I knit the Mountain Mist also specifically 3 to 6 month size, because I wanted her to wear it while I was there. I wanted to see it on her. If I made it too big, then I wouldn't be able to see it until later. So yeah, so that was very successful. And by the way, the Mountain Mist is a pattern by tinCanKnits, and I knit it in Malabrigo Rios. The peach color on top is just called Peachy, and the pink, which is the full rest of the body, is English Rose. I did use some scrap, like leftovers, for the middle section, the color work section, and I don't remember what the name of that color is, but I had some from an older project that I had used Rios for. So yeah, so that was my second finished object. And then I also finished the rainbow socks I was knitting for my friend as a Christmas gift. I finished them. I didn't take a picture of the finished socks. I already gifted it to her. Today's the 29th. I gave it to her last week already, and I'm sure she's wearing it every day. I've knit socks before for this particular friend, and she really likes the hand knit socks, and she picked out the rainbow skein as well from my stash. So I've gifted that, and that was my third finished object. I think that's about all the finished objects I have, and none of them I have here to show. I haven't I was working on a holiday sweater for myself, but that didn't get done. I actually, before my trip to Dallas, kind of injured my finger while I was cooking. I I almost always, when I'm cutting vegetables, hurt myself one way or the other. This time it was kind of bad. I'm not gonna talk about it in case it will make you queasy, but it was a bad injury. So for like 3 days, 3 to 4 days, I wasn't able to knit very well, but I still um, decided to cast on a project that'll have mostly garter sections so I could just knit, and I was using flicking or English. So in one of the episodes I mentioned that I used to be an English thrower, like that used to be my knitting style, and I trained myself to be a continental knitter. But because I did that, now I can do both very easily, so I can switch between English and continental. And also because I do two-hand color work, I have also been practicing my throwing. So while my left hand was out of commission, I was using my right hand and doing the throwing. But I mean, I cast on a simple project that I could just do knits on. I can't purl very well English, so I've I mean, because I injured my finger, I couldn't do any purling. But yeah, so I think that's a good segue into my works in progress. All right, are you ready for my works in progress? So let's start. I'm trying to think. Okay, since I was talking about the garter project that I cast on last week because I hurt my finger, let's just talk about that. I think a couple of episodes ago I showed in my stash acquisitions this beautiful Malabrigo Rios color that I purchased. This is the Wales Road color. It's a very pretty bluish purplish yarn. I don't know if you can, if the light is good enough to show it, but yeah. So this is Rios, which is a worsted weight yarn. And again, I'm sorry if I keep looking to the side. I'm just, while I'm showing this, I'm just watching if it is looking good on the screen. And I was going to cast on the Hipster Shawl by Locatelli for my neighbor. My neighbor, this really sweet lady, she watches our cats when we're away on trips, and I don't feel comfortable offering her money. I don't think she would appreciate that very much if I asked her if I can pay her for watching my cats, because she definitely does it just because she's such a generous and kind person. So I decided I'd knit her something, and I asked her if she'd like socks or a shawl or something, and she said she'd like a shawl. So I picked this shawl to knit for her. This is the Hipster Shawl by Hohi, and it has these sections of dropped stitches, and you crisscross it and everything. I'm really happy with how this is looking. I think she told me she likes blues and purples, so I think this is a good yarn that kind of satisfies the blues and purples request. I did not alternate skeins. I think Rios for a shawl, it's good enough to just like knit one skein after the other. I'm very happy with how it's turning out. I think I've made decent progress on it. Of course, the beginning is easy. This is, I'm working on my second, so it totally needs 620 yards or so. So I got 3 skeins of Rios, and I'm working through my second skein right now. I still have a few ways to go, but I'm enjoying this, and this is a really quick knit, I think, because it's a shawl on a worsted weight yarn basically, so it's looking really pretty. The only thing I would say is, I think this is the right side, so between these two sections of the drop stitches there is some texture here, and I think because it's a variegated yarn you can't really see the texture. There's some knits and pearls here, but you can see nothing. So I might as well have just done garter over there. I didn't have to do any texture because you can see it on the variegated yarn. If it was a solid color, you'd definitely be able to see the texture. That's the only thing I think, but I'm very happy with the yarn, and Rios is a good gift yarn, I feel, especially if you're not sure how the recipient reacts to 100% wool, if they feel it's too itchy or something. I didn't want to give a shawl that you'll tend to put around your neck, which is also kind of itchy. That would not serve the purpose. So I think I prefer using superwash for gift knits until I figure out what the tolerance to prickly things is. I mean, things don't, like, this is, to me it's not prickly, but to someone else, the moment they wear this, they're going to be like, oh my god, what is this? I understand we have different tolerances, so that's why I stick to superwash for gift knitting. So yeah, so that was my Hipster shawl by Hohi, and I'm really enjoying knitting on that. So that was work in progress number 1. Then the second one is a test knit that is due later in January, and this is test knit for Jessica McDonald. Jessica is a beautiful designer. She has lovely patterns available, and she does a lot of color work, cabling, all sorts of sweaters. She has a lot of children's sweaters, and I've spoken about her multiple times in my previous episodes. Jessica also has very wonderful YouTube podcast if you'd like to check it out. But yeah, so I'm test knitting the Blizzard sweater, and I have finished the yoke, and I'm now working on the body. And I was knitting on this monogamously before I left for my trip to Dallas, because I really wanted to finish the color work and get it to a stage where now it's just like stockinette and I don't have to think much about it. I'm really pleased with my color work tension on this sweater. I haven't blogged it, so this is just as it is. I'm extremely happy with my color work tension. The one modification I made was Jessica makes you cast on stitches for the collar, knit the collar, and then continue with the rest of the body. So you already knit the collar before you start the color work. But every time I've done that in the past with my sweaters, when I block my sweater, my collar just like spreads a lot and it becomes a very wide neck. And I don't really enjoy that. I like having my neck closed, like a closed neck. I feel that looks smarter on certain type of sweaters for me, and depending on what kind of a look I'm going for. And I really wanted a smart closed neck look for this. So what I ended up doing was I cast on and started the color work, and then I went back, picked up stitches for the collar. I picked up stitches for the collar and knit the collar later. And I've tried this on, and this looks really nice, and it sits on my neck the way I want it to. I'm a little concerned about this bubbling here, but I think once I knit the sleeves and it all comes together, that might go away. But yeah, that's the progress on my Blizzard sweater, and I'm really, really enjoying it. I love, oh, I never spoke about this. So I'm using Holst Garn Super Soft for this. I had purchased some cones of Holst Garn, so I'm knitting directly from the cone. But this sweater is a DK weight sweater, and this is a light fingering. I'm holding it double. So the pink is sweet pea color, and this one, the main color, is called Oxford. I really like working with Holst Garn. It's a very woolly wool. It's very budget friendly. You get this whole, I think I purchased 2 cones, and I think with shipping to the US, it completely cost me like $70, I want to say, which, I mean, is not bad. I know we do pay quite a bit for shipping to the US, and I think it's cheaper for people in Europe to buy it, but I still think that even with shipping, it's very budget friendly. So I get like a cone for 35 odd US dollars, which is pretty good. And I think you can easily knit a whole sweater with this. But yeah, some people do find knitting with Holst Garn to be a little difficult. It's a little hard on your hands, I think it can be. But honestly, when I started knitting with it, I felt that. But as I went through the sweater, I stopped feeling that. Like I kind of got used to it, I think, and I really like. I'm just going on talking about my color work tension. I'm so happy with it. I think I mentioned previously that I kind of had some doubts about my color work tension and all that in previous projects, but this particular yarn I think has helped, and it's looking nice. I'm happy with it. So this is due Jan 23rd, so I'm gonna finish this by then. Right now I just have to do stockinette, and then I have to do the sleeves as well, but it should not take me too long to do that. Yep. So that's the progress on my blizzard sweater. Next work in progress is a small one. I cast on a pair of vanilla socks for Mr. Skeins of Dreams. He really enjoys hand knit socks, so once I finished my Christmas pair, I decided I'd cast on a pair for him. So I'm making just a vanilla self-striping yarn. So this yarn is by Nomadic yarns. I've mentioned Nomadic yarns before. I was making my Christmas socks with the same base actually. This is Nomadic yarns Brit sock, which is 80% Blueface Leicester and 20% nylon, which is one of my favorite bases for sock knitting. This particular colorway is called Nocturne. It's a very beautiful, it has black, blue, purple, a deep wine red, and a bright yellow. Those are the stripes. I really like this particular colorway. It's called Nocturne, if I didn't mention that already. But yeah, so I'm knitting just vanilla socks for Baljeet, and he really liked this color. When I bought the yarn, I had shown it to him, and his eyes shone bright. So I decided that I think I'm gonna make socks for him with this. So yeah, this was just, I finished my socks, and I like having some socks on my needles that I can knit mindlessly. I do know that I have the other butterfly socks. I'm not going to show them today because they're actually in my car. I don't have them with me right now. I've been knitting on them, but I haven't finished them. Jackie did say that because of the holidays, she's going to release the pattern in the new year, so I still have some time to finish those. But because they are cabling and everything, they're not really mindless, so I did want a vanilla sock on my needles as well, so I cast this on as well. I think it's been like 3 days since I cast this on. So yeah, that's another work in progress. The next one is I was watching The Meaningful Stitch, which is Amy Palco. She has a podcast, and I'm sure you all already know about Amy. Amy is like, I would call her my spirit person. She's so beautiful, she's so well spoken. I really enjoy watching her knitting, and one of my favorite things about Amy is that she knits with a whole variety of colors, of fibers, of yarn, you know, like she uses a lot of budget friendly yarns. She also uses some luxury yarns, so her knitting range is like all inclusive, and I love that. I think Amy from the Meaningful Stitch and Selma of the Little Big Knits, they're both like my idols when it comes to knitting. They both are like this. They love all colors, all fibers, all yarns, and they're so inspiring all the time. I look at their projects every time I watch their episodes. I'm like, okay, I have to cast this on. Okay, I have to buy this yarn. I try not to do that every time, but this particular cast on. So when I finished that blanket that I gave to my niece, I really wanted to cast on another blanket for myself. Being a knitter, I've been knitting for 5-6 years, and I've never made a knitted blanket, and I really want to make a knitted blanket. So I was watching Amy's podcast, the last one, and she finished her Quadrangle Spires by Stephen West. And the Quadrangle Spires is not a blanket pattern, it is a shawl pattern. But Amy, she used, I don't know, I think her gauge was off. That's what she said, like maybe her gauge was off or something. It turned out massive. It's huge and it's beautiful, and I love the colors, and it's so perfect. So I saw that and I was like, okay, I'm gonna knit this, and I'm going to use a larger needle size on purpose so it becomes a blanket on purpose, because I love how it looks. So I cast on the Quadrangle Spires. This is just one quadrant that I've started. So this bottom brown was my cast on edge, and I've just started. It's been like 2 days. I'm knitting this with, again, Holst Garn Super Soft, and I bought cones. I have a lot of, I think I had gone crazy when I had bought this particular cone of black. I had purchased like 3 other colors, so I had got a massive package delivered from Holst, and this was, I think, a couple years back. It's not a recent purchase. So I had a few cones on me already, and I think Amy talked about using this scarab colorway in one of her episodes. I think it was in the last episode. She's talking about knitting a sweater with this color, and I saw this color and I saw that blanket, and I was like, okay, I must do this. So I ended up buying this cone and casting on the Quadrangle Spires. So you could say that I had an Amy Palco moment. I just completely got inspired by her and did exactly what she's doing. Though she's not using Holst Garn for her, she didn't use Holst Garn for her Quadrangle Spires, but I ended up deciding, because I had so much of it in stash, I just had to add this one more cone and I'd be set. So anyway, this color, the contrast color is scarab, and the main color is coffee. I think it's called coffee or coffee beans. It's a really pretty brown. So this is also Holst Super Soft, and I think this is going to be my main color. I have other colors. I don't have them over here, so I'm going to put a picture on the screen that shows what my color palette for the Quadrangle Spires is going to be, and it's completely going to be in Holst Super Soft. I'm holding the yarn single, and I'm using US 5 needles for this. So you can also see it's a very like open gauge, but I think Holst tends to do that, and then once you block it, it does bloom quite a bit because it's still got the spinning oil on it. But I think that might be perfect for a blanket. I think at this gauge it's not scratchy also, it's very soft, and it's going to make a perfect blanket or throw on my couch. So yeah, so I had another bout of castanitis. And I'm talking about 3 new projects than I was talking about last time. And you probably have realized that I have a lot of works in progresses now, because from the beginning of my podcast journey, I've spoken about a lot of projects, and most of you would have noticed that a lot of them didn't get finished. So I wanted to talk about my intentions for 2022. And I know everyone's like, oh, here we go again, she's gonna say she's not gonna buy yarn, but then next episode she's gonna buy yarn. So that's not what I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna promise anything about yarn purchasing, but I want to set my intentions for 2022 in terms of knitting and crafting. So my goal is I want to work through a lot of my stash, especially gift knits, because they are sitting in my stash waiting to be gifts which will then be given away. So if I knit those and give them away, that will create a lot of space in my stash and in my closet. So I'm not setting any rules, but here are like just, you know, thoughts and intentions. So if I put it out there, and I'm gonna, you know, consciously work towards it. So I want to work on all my gift knits and give them away so that they leave my house and they make someone else happy. I also want to go back to all my unfinished works in progress and one by one finish them. And I'm not saying I'm not going to cast on new projects, but if we have a decent system, like for every 2 new cast-ons, the third one is going to be an old whip, I think that's sufficient. I think that will take me through the year, and I can empty some of my project bags that are currently occupied with unfinished objects. So 2022, I'm gonna finish a lot of my unfinished objects. I'm just, every beginning of year, I know we set intentions. I'm not gonna say the R word, I'm not gonna call it that. I just think I just want to have a positive mindset, go into the new year with a positive mindset, and hopefully get some of these plans and goals finished. Yeah, but I'm not promising that I'm not gonna cast on new projects. That's always going to happen, but the pace at which I'm gonna cast on will be slowed down by the fact that I want to finish some of my older whips. But yeah, so that's my plan for 2022. Yeah, so that was today's episode, I guess. That was all my knitting content and life stuff and Ask Megha Anything segment. So if you've seen the entire episode, thank you so much for sticking with it. Thank you so much for watching. Hope all of you have a lovely new year, and if you're watching this before New Year, and then if you're watching it after New Year's, have a very joyous and prosperous 2022. Thank you so much for encouraging me and watching my knitting videos. I really appreciate the community we've built around this particular podcast. I'm really grateful and thankful for all the new friends I've made, be it podcasters or viewers, everyone that I'm interacting with. I'm really having a great time with this shared passion of ours and this community we're building. Thank you so much. And I think this is going to be my last video for the year, so I'm going to sign off on a very positive note, wishing everyone a safe and prosperous 2022. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and happy crafting. Bye.